Hi everyone, I'm Sunny and you're watching Sunny Preps, and this is a fantastic day. I am taking you with me on my last day at my job. I'm starting a new adventure in my life. So join me. Safety first.
1, 2, 3, come on!
This is the most fantastic morning, maybe not ever, but recently. So in a way, I am retiring at the age of 54. So obviously that's not old enough to technically retire. So what am I doing? Why am I doing this? And how did I do this? That's the most question I get the most is how. The more important question is why. Okay, well, as you can see, it's the next day. I want to talk a little bit about the why. So last night was fantastic. My hours are really odd. So I said goodbye to all the lovely people I work with, either earlier in the day or earlier in the week, because we don't all work the same hours. So when it came time for me to leave, I just punched out and I tucked my key card into my supervisor's mailbox, and Elvis left the building. Okay, it was just me. I left the building. But it was somewhat of a relief. Like a burden had been lifted off my shoulders. But really, it felt more like somebody had unhooked my leash. And now I am experiencing freedom. So why is the question I want to address with this video. Why did I want to break free from the safety of my overlord's control? Without somebody watching over me, I might step in a hole. I might fall into a trap. I might not know where my next meal is coming from. I might not have a place to stay. Without my leash, I might even run out into traffic. But I could also drink from the sweetest well. I could climb the highest mountain and become the alpha of my own pack. None of which I could do if I was on somebody else's chain. Okay, I'm being a little dramatic. I'm not a domesticated animal that is suddenly being turned out into the wild. But it's an analogy. I spent 15 years of my adult life investing in someone else's career and being a stay-at-home mom. Now, half of that investment turned out really well, and it's very good. And half of it didn't turn out so well. So then, as a single mom, nearly 100% of my effort for the next 10 years was poured into raising my children and providing for them and guiding them and being involved in their activities and developing them into the wonderful human beings that they are today. I have absolutely no regrets about the devotion of that time to them. I wouldn't have it any other way. But as I approached empty nesthood, things had to change. There was not going to be any more child support once my youngest was 18. And I could keep the house that I bought to raise them in, but it would have been a stretch. It would have stretched my finances to the point where I would have been stressed and I wouldn't have had any money to help them out with their school expenses, with keeping their car running, with just extra gas money once in a while. All these things that young adults need while they are figuring out how the world works. and I wanted to be able to help my kids out with that kind of stuff. So I started thinking, what do I do? Okay, it's time to focus on my career. So I started applying for some new jobs. I mean, that's the typical thing we think of when we start thinking about climbing the ladder, right? And improving our circumstances. So within the company that I worked for, one job came up, and actually somebody recommended that I apply for it. They were going to be part of the decision making and thought that I would be good in that position and encouraged me to apply. So I did. I didn't get it, and I understand why, because the person that applied actually did have a few months more seniority with the company than I did. Then another job came up, and I applied for the position, and I didn't get it. And again, I was told that it was a very close decision. The person that did get it was brought in from outside, had some more specific experience that related to the position that was open. Fine, I'm not bitter about somebody else getting that job, but I recognized that I wasn't getting the jobs that were becoming available, so I'm not quite the most qualified. What can I do to make myself more qualified for these positions? The only thing I could really come up with was getting a master's degree. I could do that online in the evenings, very specific toward the business that I was in. And that was possible. I seriously considered that for a little while. But it could take several years to get a master's degree if you're just getting it part-time. Even if you're online, you can only move so fast. And they weren't free. It was going to be a significant investment in time and money. I was already 50, and there was no guarantee that I was going to be chosen for any of the jobs I applied for after I got my degree. So that was a pretty risky proposition with a big investment. So I tried to think of something else. The most obvious thing I could think of is, okay, I need to reduce my expenses so that the job that I do have that is comfortable and easy will be providing enough to cover my expenses and still leave a little bit left over. The biggest expense I had was my house and the taxes that went with it. My son was already on his own. My daughter would soon be moving to a dorm room. And I simply did not need the size of house that it was. And I actually didn't really like the location. It was convenient for before they learned to drive, and they wanted to walk to neighbors and the bus stop and the pizzeria and the movie theater and things like that. But there were way too many people too close to me. Even before I started thinking about homesteading or anything like that, or being away from people for any prepper situations that might come up and being out of the hive, I still was over being that close to people. I wanted to get away. So I started looking for houses. Now, I knew if I got a little further away from the city, I could get much more affordable. If I got out of the county that contained the city, the taxes would be less expensive, and I could get more space. It wouldn't hurt me to drive a little further every day if I didn't need to race back for after-school football games and to pick people up from cheer practice, and you know the drill. So that seemed like an ideal thing to do, and I started doing that. And then I started thinking, well, if I'm going to move anyway, why don't I move into a duplex and I'll live in half of it and rent out the other half? That's called house hacking. I don't know, it's a weird name, but that's what it's called. And that was a definite possibility for me. But I realized that I couldn't find a good duplex for $50,000 to $100,000. Especially not closer to the 50 than the 100. But I could find 2 decent houses for $50,000 to $75,000 total for both houses. So that's what I did. and a small real estate investor was born. I studied everything I could get my hands on, and I'll talk more about that in a future video. I hired property managers and grew, got more houses, and started making money. That still leaves us with the question of, why did I quit? Why not keep my job and my benefits and keep going with the properties that I had? Why did I quit my job? Yeah, job spells job, but it stands for just over broke. Because if you are trading hours for dollars, you're probably going to stay at just over broke most of the time. That's another why that I learned after I started studying a lot, and I'll go into more of that later. But there were many reasons that I needed to go ahead and leave my job and move on to taking care of my investments. First of all, property managers will rarely take as much care with your property and your money as you would. Enough said. Hard lesson learned. People tried to tell me that at the beginning, and I there's nothing wrong with my property managers. It's just, I think I can do better for me, myself. Even with a property manager at this level, where you're not so high you can pay anybody to do what needs to be done, there will always be a demand on your time, even if it's just in networking and continuing education, which the company I work for changed my shift very suddenly after I had joined several real estate groups. And so for the past 6 months, I haven't been able to attend any of those groups, and I really feel like it's affecting my motivation and my knowledge on taking care of my properties and my investment. I also realized that putting time and effort into my own business and investments had the potential to pay much bigger rewards. And those are rewards of finance, of course, but also of satisfaction, freedom, and growth potential. Investing in my own leaves me with unlimited potential. Now, another reason is a little more spiritual, maybe. I realized that I could not affect change with my job. I could pour time and energy and creativity and devotion into that company, and even if it was just into the one little department, I was just trying to change my own one little corner of that world, and I poured all that into it. Nothing was going to change. Nothing was going to change. It is an enormous company with a top-heavy network of layer after layer of administration, and it just made more sense to unplug from that matrix and change my entire world than to try to change that system from the inside at the ground level. I could affect more change in my world by unplugging from them. So that development led me also to realize the next development, that and my growth and my learning that I was doing along the way, that as I change my world, I'm building a legacy for my kids and for future generations. I want to make a difference that starts now, but can be built upon for generations and generations. And I know not every generation is going to improve it, and any generation can drop the ball and it could just go to hell in a handbasket. But I heard something, I'm sure I heard it from Roots and Refuge, and I believe I heard it from somebody else, with Joel Salatin talking about at Homeowners of America, whether it was this year or the year before, was talking about a 100-year plan. And what you do on your homestead now is not necessarily for you in your lifetime. If you're planting nut trees, you're probably, especially if you're 50 and you're still planting nut trees, you're probably not ever going to get enough nuts off of them to make it worth the effort buying the tree and finding the perfect location and planting it and watering it and taking care of it, putting up a shield for the deer. And you're really going to have to baby that little tree. But you're doing it for the next generation. And maybe generations after that. It's part of a 100-year plan. This is part of my 100-year plan. And my parents. It's part of their 100-year plan. The other thing that leaving my job to take care of my own business is going to provide for me is the flexibility of hours because of the kind of business it is. And I know that's not always going to work depending on what kind of business you may start for yourself. But for what I've started, there are times when I absolutely am going to have to answer the call for my business and my investments. But there are also times where I'm going to be able to answer the call for outside purposes. And those calls could come from family and friends and my own health and sanity. And when those calls come, I want to be able to answer them. I want to be able to take care of them. As the matriarch and ad hoc patriarch for my family, a flexible schedule is vital for being able to meet those needs. And for those of you who are able to tag team with a spouse or a partner, I hope you understand what a gift that is. Besides being available when others need me, it's important that I have flexibility in setting my time and priorities when I work. And I am working. I've sort of called it a semi-retirement, but that is a complete misnomer. I am pursuing my own business and professional goals and working harder than ever. And I am sure there are many of you that can completely relate to what I'm saying with that. Even if you've given up your day job and gone out to live a self-sustaining lifestyle on a homestead, that is some hard work. Included in the flexible schedule is that I am now better able to find the time and the freedom to prep and respond to threats that might come our way. I'll have more time to garden, to can, to dehydrate, to play with my solar system that I bought that I've never set up, to get better rain barrels installed. I know you can't see it from here, but it's a mess. The timing of this actually couldn't be better because all anybody is talking about this weekend is the coronavirus from China. Now, I don't think anyone should overreact to the coronavirus from China, because these things always seem to get blown out of proportion and then drop off the news cycle within weeks of making it to the US with very little impact. Of course, there's an impact to the people that do get sick, and it does take some lives, but it has never been the apocalypse people have worked it out to be. But with that said, I did work in a medical diagnostics lab in the very department where they test for the flu and RSV and strep throat and a respiratory panel of all sorts of diseases, among other really gross things that we tested for. So I'm just as glad to be gone. So since I don't have to go into a job, whether it's working in the lab or working with people or anything else, now if a pandemic or any other kind of threat to our existence or way of life does happen to come along, I am perfectly capable of quarantining my family into the house for as long as it takes for the threat to pass or to bug out. I don't need to worry about a job. People are going to be living in the houses that I have. They pay their rent online. So those are the reasons why I left my job, my just over broke, to take control of my own investments, to have time for what needs to be done with the investments, to invest time and effort in what has the greatest potential for reward or and satisfaction, to maximize my ability to change my world, to build a legacy, and to have a flexible schedule for me, my loved ones, my business, and future curveballs that might be thrown at me, because this is a prepping channel and we're always prepping for the future. So in a future video, I will talk more about how I was able to do that, starting at 50, a single mom that didn't have a lot of savings, technically didn't have a lot of savings, how I was able to turn that around and be able to retire now. A lot of that's not because I've made massive amounts of money. Don't get me wrong. A lot of it is because I have reduced my expenses significantly, and that really makes a big difference. But not everybody's going to be able to do what I did in the amount of time that I did it as, one single person, because I really lucked into some situations. But anybody can do it, and there are secrets on how to do it, and I want to share those with you. And I am just about to run out of battery, so I'm going to sign off now. Thanks for watching. Thanks for helping me celebrate. I am so excited that I'm moving on to the next step in this fantastic journey that I'm taking. And don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and share all those buttons there, and hit the notifications, and join me for many more future videos, because I have a lot more time to get into not only how and why I'm doing this business, but also into the prepping and into the self-sustaining and to getting off grid, things like that. I'm really excited to do more videos about that. So whatever the future holds for you, think outside the box, find a way to reach your goals, figure out what your goals are, and always keep smiling, because a rainy day is no match for a sunny disposition. I'll see you guys later. Bye.
1, 2, 3.